everyone, and welcome to Projectkin's Speakers Corner. This wonderful program, now I believe this is our third episode, is a series, the brainchild of our very own Jennifer Jones, who brings together Projectkin members and elsewhere to tell their stories, because we're all about stories, family stories, the stories that are deep within us. So with that, I'm going to step back and turn it over to Jennifer to introduce today's guests. Go ahead, please, Jennifer.
Thanks, Barbara. I'd also like to welcome everyone along to Speakers Corner. And yes, it's our third event. Who would have thought? Back at the start, I thought it may be just a one-off. We'll just see how it goes. But I've been blown away by the support, and we've had some wonderful speakers, as we do today. So just a little quick a heads up about what Speakers Corner is for our visitors who haven't been before. So Speakers Corner is, a Projectkin monthly event where we have two storytellers come along and they'll tell us a story about something from their family to a particular theme, and their stories will be different. So today we have two wonderful storytellers from the Projectkin community. I'm sure you'll all know Diane Burley from Musings of a Storyteller, and Laurie White from Lost and Found Storybox. I know they need no introduction here. They're quite prolific writers and very active in the community. So just a little I wanted to say, when I first came to Substack, it was just as a pop-in to see what was happening, because my friend Denise had moved her blog over. So I just wanted to know why and what she was up to. And I came across this huge heading, Call Me a Bastard, and had to read that. I just had to read that. And I just thought, then I'm in. So thanks, Laurie, for
Thank you.
getting me to stick around. But really, I love that story, and I'd say to anyone who hasn't read it yet, it's been around for a while now. That was probably a couple of years ago. Yeah. Just go through Laurie's archives and have a look. It's a really great story. And then Diane's stories I read as soon as they're published. And the first one I came across with Diane, and I'm not sure whether it was her first or whether I was a little bit late coming to Diane, was her stories about memory. And she wrote about memory, and oh gosh, and she did a event with Barbara about it. And yeah, and again, I'd just urge you to go back and have a look at that if you've missed it on the way through. So that's a great thing here. The stories are there in the archives. We can go back anytime and have a look. Today we're going to have stories on the theme of the legacies that our females left in our family. And I might just go to Diane and Laurie, and they can tell you more about it than I can. So over to you, Diane. Tell us your story.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I am so excited to be able to do this. It's sort of like a soft launch of a project I've been working on now for almost 3 years. And the origin of that is through another family member, who I have to talk about briefly. My Aunt Molly is my mom's eldest sister. She's still alive. She just had her 103rd birthday. At her 100th birthday, I went up there and she took me aside, a little hard of hearing, so the din of people around her was a little hard to talk over. She grabbed me, pulled me aside, and she said, we have a relative who was a labor organizer and a suffragette. And I'm like, what? How did this happen that I didn't know about this? So I got back to New Jersey and started digging in. And there was a Wikipedia page, but it was really brief. And it's on this woman, Leonora Carney Berry. I wasn't even too sure how we were related. The information on her was very sketchy. So that made it a compelling mystery for me as well. Like, now I needed to know more, right? That's sort of my personality in a nutshell. Give me a wall, I got to figure out how to get up, over it, around it, or through it, right? So there I am. My aunt couldn't give me much more detail except for about 20 years ago, she was invited to do an unveiling for a plaque, a roadside plaque of Leonora Carneyberry in Amsterdam, New York, where she had resided and was later working in a textile mill. So I go back to the beginning and I start writing it. In the meantime, I'm wanting to work on a book. And I've got a book editor, and she says to me, Jill Swenson, I think you guys know her. Jill says to me, you should start on Substack. Start on Substack and just start writing. Just start writing about whatever. So the first thing I start writing about is Leonora Carneyberry, and I'm again trying to peel back the onions on what is there, and I'm finding that the information about her is not accurate. So now I don't know how much I can rely on and what I'm going to reduce. So I go back to the beginning. Ireland, that's where she was born. Leonora was born in Ireland in 1849. And in 1849, in Cork, in that western portion of Ireland, it is poor. It is tremendously poor. The houses are made out of mud. In fact, when I looked at a map and saw how destitute this area was, where she allegedly resided, it wasn't all of it, it wasn't in its totality, but a good portion of people lived in mud houses. At the same time, the Catholic Church was forbidden, right? That it's just not allowed. So church records were really, really scarce. I was able to find her eventually, but not under the name Leonora. It was under the name Honora, Honora, which is her mother's given name, Honora Marie. All right, so I had a little bit of something here. I'm guesstimating the father's age, the mother's age. I find their baptismal, I'm sorry, their marriage certificate. Now I get back to the United States. I'm going, okay, my mom and my aunt all grew up in the northern country, what we call the North Country of New York. It is on the Canadian border. It's bordered on the east and on the west by Canada with lakes and the St. Lawrence Seaway in between. We lived in Buffalo, which was a 6.5 hour, 7 hour drive up to that area. I'm living in New Jersey now, which is a 7 hour drive to that area. So I know the North Country really well. It's gorgeous in the summertime. You've never been to a prettier place. The birds, the trees, it's prolific with fishing and outdoor and everything. The wintertime is another story. The winter time, it can get to 40 below zero, and that's not with the wind chill factor. That's how cold it was. And I can remember being at my Graham's house in Norwood, which is the next town over from all these the setting that I'm talking about. I was inside the bedroom scraping ice off the window. And that memory always stuck with me. Like, who could have lived here before there was central heat? Leonora lived there before there was central heat. And again, I'm thinking to myself, that must have felt like hell. But then I'm looking at these mud houses and I come across a quote by a commander who was on the USS Jamestown, who was there to help feed. This is during the potato famine, and had come with a rescue ship with provisions. And he wrote, I saw enough in 5 minutes to horrify me. Hovels crowded with the sick and dying, without floors, without furniture, and with patches of dirty straw covered with still dirtier shreds, and patches of humanity. Some called for water to Father Matthew, and others for a dying blessing. So with that in mind, I'm now looking at Pierpont, New York, even in the coldest weather, and this has got to be God's country. It's Eden in comparison. She ends up migrating with her parents at age 3 to Pierpont. Her father has taken land in this tiny little town with cousins and brothers all around. Again, it was really hard for me to pinpoint exactly the relation. I do believe that my great-great-grandfather and her father were first cousins. They lived real close to each other on Irish Settlement Road. Um, I mean, they're obviously kins. I just think maybe they were brothers, but I cannot locate that. So I'm going to go with cousins. That I'm comfortable saying. And it's really been a labor of love to delve into her life. She was her mother came from English nobility, which is really a little strange, Catholic, but of noble heritage. Obviously, those titles had been stripped away, and so had the wealth. But she'd been educated in Dublin. And I found this through newspaper accounts where Leonora was giving sketches of her life, 5 languages. So she learned at her mother's knee, no formal education. Her mother passed when Leonora was only 15. Her father had not wanted a girl to be educated. She was able to convince a schoolmistress that she was smart, took a test, and was qualified now to teach first grade, first and second grade. She wanted to teach high school. They said, no, you don't have enough education to do that. She became a seamstress, and at some point she married her husband, William. She's about 20, 21 years old, living in Potsdam, New York, when her first daughter was born. He's a musician. He's also a house painter. They end up in Amsterdam, and in Amsterdam, life is just wonderful. He's a musician and a composer. He's leading a musical brigade. They must have been living a terrific life with a little bit of royalty, right? Where the band would come and she'd go to the park, and her husband's up there as a composer. Unfortunately, he passes of consumption, and shortly after, her eldest daughter dies. So now she has 2 sons trying to figure out how to make a living, and ends up going to the textile mills in this burgeoning town of Amsterdam, New York. The textile mills are hellacious, just tremendous poverty. The hours are long, the wages are ridiculously low. It's piecework, so if you're not moving fast, you're not getting paid. Um, she's watching in these unsafe, unsanitary conditions, children having to go in and do changing the bobbins on these fast spinning machines. In the wintertime, it was freezing. In the summer times, it was stifling. There were punitive fines for being late or for talking, and there was a lot of sexual coercion and assaults of these young women at work. She was disgusted. She found out about this Knights of Labor, which was an organization, a fraternal organization, but unlike other unions that had been in that time period of the late 18th century, this was an inclusive organization. It allowed men and women, although many of the women were like waitresses, servants, they were these textile workers. They were inclusive of whether or not you were skilled or unskilled, white, black, freed slaves. So it was a very, and on all religions. I'll just compare that to like a tailor's union, which tended to be white, Presbyterian, and male. So this was a new found way of communing with others in labor organizations and finding out what their rights were. Leonora, of course, was there, and with all of the learnings from her mother, she is taking copious notes. She goes to the National Convention in Richmond, Virginia, and she gives this tremendous speech outlining these horrible abuses that are going on. They are so impressed that they name her the national inspector for the women's department, thinking that they wanted to get data on what women and children were faced with, which was terrific, except for guess what? The Labor Department was just burgeoning and there was no data. So she's going off into the field. She's got her carpet bag, taking stagecoach, rail, steamer, whatever. And she goes to every state in what was the Union at that time, annotating and interviewing people. Now, it was okay at first when she was doing these one-to-one interviews, but after a while, the foreman became savvy and started locking her out and punishing the people who actually spoke to her. And she found out that they were losing their jobs. So now she's in that horrible dilemma of having to decide, well, how do I meet the mandate? Because she's getting paid good money at this point to go and pull out this information without putting these these young women in jeopardy for talking to her and for letting her in the buildings. So she starts meeting them where they are, at church groups, at schools, and she's educating them as to why they should be joining the Knights of Labor, of why they should be looking at their rights and these things. So she comes back with her next report the following year, and she's got very detailed information, although it starts to wane at the end of it. And some of the men are getting a little antsy because her rhetoric is getting a little bit more virulent as she's angry at what she's seeing. She's also Irish, so she's got her Irish up. She's an amazing orator, an amazing orator. So she's got half the crowd riveted and the other crowd angry at her. The crowd that's angry at her, some of them are other Knights of Labor high up in the organization, and they start doing petty things to sort of pick away at her, uh, to chip away at her, what she's trying to accomplish. She's with the Knights of Labor for 4 years. She annotates at great detail the cost of what it was to make a hat, to make a coat, to make clothing, what men were paid, what women were paid, what children were paid, what peace workers were paid who, when she was married, she would get pin money by taking in mending. And now she's realizing that by taking in mending at a lower rate than what a factory earner would earn, she's actually hurt, if that was actually hurting them. And she's in this dilemma of trying to figure out what to do because she's torn. She grew up Irish Catholic. A woman's place was in the home until it wasn't. Tragedy pushed her out into the workforce. She's looking at how pin money is now hurting laborers, and she's wrestling with this. And in the writings that I've found, not by in the usual ways, it's as newspaper articles are being digitized, I'm able to find these accounts of hers. And what I also recognize, and I'm sort of like skipping ahead here because I'm running out of time to get through this. In 1889, she ends up reading the handwritings on the wall. The men in the organization largely dislike her. They want her out. They send her on a sort of a wild goose chase down to the deep South, which is still very much dealing with segregation, the post, I guess, post Civil War, not really free, sort of indentured servitude, even though they're free. She contracts malaria. She's seeing conditions down there that were even worse than what she saw in the north, which is like almost amazingly impossible. And she comes back and she says, I can't do this anymore. But she does it in a ladylike way, no confrontation for her. She says, I'm getting married. I'm marrying a printer who's also a Knights of Labor activist. They're going to move to Missouri. And so the postscript of her days at the Knights of Labor are, and she lived happily ever after because she realized her place was in the home and that was the end of it. I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it. So I started looking at not Leonora Carney Berry, which was her first husband's last name, but what happens to women when she marries, she takes in the identity of a new husband, Obadiah Reed Lake. So I start looking for Mrs. Obadiah Reed Lake, Mrs. Lake, and I find this treasure trove of information. She spent the next 40 years on the Chautauqua Institute circuit, now as a temperance organizer. And I have feelings as to why that happened, which I will talk about in a future one, not to monopolize this one. But she didn't go off peacefully into the quiet. She became a suffragette. She reconciled those feelings of where a woman's true home was. And it wasn't within four walls, but it was in the community that she served. And that community could be as wide as she wanted that to be. I think that's a good place to end this. I'm just really excited about writing about her. And I think her legacy, just to tie it back to our topic, is that Leonora is both my subject and my mirror. I look at my life through her life. And what I bitched and moaned about, I go, holy cow, am I blessed? And I think that perspective is something that I'm learning to pass on to my wider community with my writing. And I'm just really excited to write about Leonora, to write about my Aunt Molly, to write about my other relatives. It's sort of in juxtaposition to where Leonora was. So that's my story, my shortened story at I think I did that at 78 RPMs.
That's just so great, Diane. And so many things are coming up for me hearing that, but we'll come back to that. At the end, we'll take some questions. Oh, Barbara's got her hand up. Barbara? No? Oh, sorry.
Thanks.
Absolutely. It was wonderful. Yeah, so over to you, Laurie.
Can I
tell us
cede my
about your
time to
story.
Diane? I want to hear more. Can I cede my time?
No, you can't.
No, she said
damn it.
20 minutes, not a moment longer. I was like,
Oh man, that is a fabulous story. I love those kinds of stories, right? I mean, like finding somebody and then just digging in and finding there's so much more to the story, and that's a great one.
well, and I think
Really
Lisa
good
McGuire hits it too, that it's this micro history, right? It's in order to understand more, I had to look at Ireland and then Pierpont, New York. So places become characters. And I
Yeah.
think that's what's fulfilled my curiosity.
Yeah.
And the time shift too, when you look at the time of the mill girls then to temperance, that's not a big jump for those people. Not a big jump at all, it's
The following year.
yeah, but I mean like just in the social jump, it's not a big social jump.
No, you're right.
They're working and then they get married to men that are drinking and they become temperance. That's not a big jump.
No.
So it's a great tie.
We have to remember the temperance union was built, much on the lack of living up to expectations of husbands.
Absolutely.
But all of these issues, labor, housing, childcare, domestic violence, access to,
Alcoholism.
all of it is related to alcohol at that time.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so they were, that's that broadening of community.
In fact, that Knights of
I think the
Labor,
temperance union was really about
Uh,
grassroots organizing.
absolutely. Yep.
yeah, the Knights of Labor, in fact, was inclusive of everyone except for tavern owners and anybody who worked in a bar, because they were really believed that was a drain on the family. So
Yeah.
Super cool
absolutely.
story. Super
Yeah.
cool. I
Yeah.
look forward to reading everything, all of it. Bring it. Well, my story is going to fall flat compared to that. I fear.
oh no.
No, it will not.
So I kind of touched on this the other day. This is a story that I've had my entire life trying to figure out, and I'm 63 and I still haven't quite got it. But it's a story about my grandparents, especially my grandma, and a collection that they did, and the legacy that is kind of symbolized in that collection for me, and also I hope for my children and grandchildren and whoever follows after that. So I'm not gonna be quite as linear as Diane was in my story. So my grandma was born in 1908, Elvira. She was the youngest of 7 children, and she was her oldest sister. She had an older sister who was the firstborn, Lanita, and then 6 brothers, and then my grandma. When grandma was 10, Lanita died. And it was just this tragic story. She got married a year later. On the anniversary, she died, giving birth to a child. They both died. They were buried in her wedding dress. Terrible. And Lanita had worn a lavalier, a pearl and diamond lavalier that my grandma inherited, and she wore on her wedding, and I wore on my first wedding. So there's the tie to that. But when I was growing up, I always thought that my grandma was one thing. My grandma was the youngest of spoiled by all 6 of her brothers. I knew that in my heart. She was spoiled by my grandfather. Every morning, they retired when they were very young, and every morning grandpa would run to the local store and buy fresh fruit and fresh pastries while my grandma laid in bed and put her face on in the bathroom. My grandma never left her bedroom until she had her face on, had her hair done, and put on what she called a persuader. Now, a persuader, Jill, maybe as a Minnesotan, maybe you know what this is. A persuader is a girdle that goes from your ankle bone up to your neck. And this thing could pull out a small truck out of a mud hole. It was so strong, super duper strong. My grandma was 5'0", 200 pounds, brick shithouse. And she would wear this persuader so that you could bounce a quarter off any part of her body, because she did not want anyone to see dimples underneath her leisure suit or her dress. She was not going to go there. So grandma would put her face on, get her hair done, get into her persuader, and then put on a muumuu, a colorful Hawaiian muumuu, and Daniel Green gold slippers every morning, and then come out to breakfast that grandpa had set on the table for her with china and crystal and their silver. So this is the grandma I knew growing up. She had never written a check. She had never filled a car with gasoline. She had never paid a bill. And that was who I knew, right? So I grew up with this image of my grandma as this, not quite a princess, but, definitely a queen in her home. And
in Minnesota speak, it was, she lived a charmed life.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it could have been worse, but in Minnesota, you always have to add, it could have been worse.
Yeah.
But so that was the grandma that I grew up knowing. And part of that was grandma surrounded herself with just beautiful things. I mean, she had a chest of drawers that grandpa had converted into her jewelry box, a complete chest of drawers. She had a walk-in closet that was filled with hats, gloves, and shoes. She had this goblet collection that they had started back in the 60s. And my grandpa had made, they didn't have any artwork in their house. They lived in a log house that was on a river. And my grandpa had made glass cases for all of these goblets. And so my entire life I saw goblets on the wall, and they were all different, all beautiful. And my grandparents spent their whole retirement, 40 years of retirement, going around the United States, traveling in various Volkswagen camper buses, and collecting goblets. They would go into every little town. They would stop at a goblet shop. They would spend, an hour talking to the people and say, these are the ones I'm looking for. Do you have any? And then they'd pick them up. And then they would buy them. And then my grandma would put the information in notebooks like this. And included in these little notebooks are everything about the goblet, but also business cards from the people that she bought them from, receipts from the people that she bought them from, notes from what she was looking for. But anyway, so this goblet collection was always there. They had it on the walls, but they also had it. They put M&Ms in them. They put Christmas candy in them. We would drink out of them on Christmas. So they've always been part of my life. But for me, it was always kind of the symbol of who my grandma was. Just this. She had beautiful things. She understood what beauty was, because she had this really great kind of Jill charmed life, right? And so that was kind of the legacy of my youth that I got from my grandma. And talk about a role model, right? Like, this is what I want to, this is what I want. I mean, I want somebody that's going to make me breakfast in bed while I'm putting my face on in the morning. I mean, who wouldn't want that? And then as I got older, I got to know my grandma in a different way. And I realized that, her sister had died when she was 10. And she became the only daughter in a family that was all boys. And she was deeply and sheltered and protected because they were terrified that something was going to happen to my grandma. Her grandma who lived with them died when she was 12, and devastated her. When she was 22, her dad passed away before she'd gotten married, leaving her family kind of in a lurch, right? How do you have a dowry when you have no father? She ended up getting married to my grandfather, and in 1944, my grandpa's 35 years old, and they got married, and it took them 5 years to have my mom. And it wasn't something anyone ever talked about, but the suggestion moving forward was that there had been a lot of complications. Grandma, I remember telling me that she'd been in the hospital for almost 2 months after my mom was born. So we know now what that probably suggests, right? So my mom's 3 years old. It's 1944. The United States is in war. And my 36-year-old grandpa decides he's going to join the Navy and protect his country. And so my grandma is left by herself with this little girl for 2 years. And during that time, my grandpa's ship goes through 2 typhoons in Okinawa Bay, 1945. And for 6 weeks, they don't know where my grandpa is. They don't know if he's dead, if he's alive. The newspapers are all over the place, from everybody's dead to nobody got hurt. Nobody really knows. And I remember hearing that story as I got older. A lot of the information that I had, turns out, in history isn't exactly right, but it doesn't make any difference. Her experience was still the same. And so as I got older, I understood that my grandma was one of those iron fist in a velvet glove people. She had this incredible strength and this incredible ability to look at the world and say, I will not be beaten. The world can get ugly, and I will still I will find the beauty. And to me, the Goblet Collection record, I look at that and I think that was part of how she reminded herself on a daily basis. It was never hidden away. It was always out there. It was something that she would talk about. And she never talked about the hardship, but she would talk about the beauty all the time. What a fabulous legacy that was. And then when my grandma passed away in 1996, then I got into family history a little bit. It took me a while, but I eventually did. And I started finding out all these other things that I had no idea about, that my grandparents had gone through just because of history. The Great Depression, World War I, World War II. Her brothers were involved in World War I. So there was this whole history of all these things that, when you looked at my grandma in her handmade polyester matching outfit, in her high heel shoes, that was not anything anyone would see. Yeah. So which is a roundabout way of getting to the legacy idea, right? My grandparents, the other thing about my grandparents, when I talk about legacy in them, is when they retired, they did what I call serial passions. So for a while, my grandpa was into archery, and so he became the state champion in archery for his age and built a bow by hand. And then he got into lapidary, and he made beautiful jewelry, and my grandma got into, and so they weren't afraid to make different choices at different times. That's something that, as I've gotten older, is really probably a key point to the legacy that they left me, because I like my husband and I, he's retired 5 times. And people say, well, what are you doing? And we're like, that it's okay. We, like, that's how we want to be. We want to be making new decisions based on, not something that society tells us we have to do because we're a certain age or because we, whatever. We can just make those decisions, and we can change on a dime. That's okay. It's not giving up. It's not failing. It's just saying, I would rather do something else. And so I think that's part of the legacy. I know I'm kind of rambling, but I kind of ramble anyway.
No.
If you know me, I ramble. But this has been a challenge for me to kind of dig through. And thank you, Jennifer, for asking me to do it too, because again, this is something that I've had since I was born. And it's deeply layered, and legacy is important when you're young, but when you're not as young, I think the legacy becomes more important, less clear. Every day I think about my grandparents. Partly because I keep their goblets right there, and they're always right there wherever. I mean, those things went to Saudi Arabia for me in 14 boxes. And then they came back because I needed them with me. But there's just a lot of legacy that's complex and deep and difficult to articulate, even for someone who has spent 45 years articulating things. And I think that's, as I spent the last couple of weeks kind of figuring out what to say, I think that's the message. That's what I've come out of this with, is all of the legacies that were handed and that we hand forward are super complex, and they might not be what we think they are. They might change today, and tomorrow it might look like it's something different.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Now as a grandparent, I think about how my grandma and grandpa treated me and how they treated my parents. And absolutely, we try to model that. My husband and I try to model that every single day, how we look at possessions, how we look at decision-making. We are never standing alone. We're always standing with the people that came before us. And I don't know how to talk about that as well as I should.
I think you've talked about it beautifully, Laurie, and I think the way you describe legacy is just absolutely wonderful. And it's very confusing.
Yeah.
I did a talk a few years ago, and they asked me, the person I was talking about, just off the cuff, what was the legacy she left me? Oh, I just went into a spin for a moment because I'd never, and when I thought about it for a moment, oh, it was huge, but it just was so complicated.
So complicated.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. And then like with the goblets, I pulled this one out this morning. I don't know if you can see this, but it's a bleeding heart goblet. And this one was made in my grandma's writings on the bottom. In 1865, this goblet was made. Wow. Yeah. And I don't know if y'all know what a bleeding heart plant is, but they used to have those in their house, in their garden up in northern Minnesota. Jill, you maybe have had some of those too, right? And they're little pink and red flowers that they have like little drop down flowers, and each one of them looks like a heart that's been broken in half and and there's a drop of blood coming out of the bottom of them, right? So this one is my favorite one. It's probably worth $1.99. But I remember as a little girl picking the bleeding hearts out of my grandma's garden. I remember my grandma making me a dress, a little jumper that had bleeding hearts on it. I can't grow anything. I can't even grow a cactus. So I can't keep these in any garden, but I have this, and I can look at this and I can remember polishing it with my grandma. She would take the goblets out when I would visit her, and I would get to polish them to make sure they were shiny. And she would tell me the story of where she got them, and we would talk about it. So I have those memories. I have the memories of the flowers in her garden. I have the memories of talking about it, and I have this. Now, that legacy I have told my kids about, and I've told my grandkids about, but someday I'm going to have to get rid of 500 goblets.
Oh, no. Yeah. Yeah. And that's that. Hey, I can't
And
even
that's a
begin
hell
to
of a
think.
legacy.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do I do? What do I
Yeah.
do? How do you? So I've archived them all, and I've recorded every story that I knew about every single one of them. And I've transcribed all of my grandparents' notes, and I've made a map, and I've taken pictures of every single one of them. And I've shared that with all of the family members. What's the rest of the legacy? What do I do after that? How do you, what do you do, right? So there's just this whole continuum of legacy.
Yeah.
That's an honor, a privilege, a pain in my ass. But all of it, it's all of that,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And it's something that can consume me some days.
Yeah. Because your grandmother was so important in your life.
Yeah.
It's going to be really hard to pass these goblets on to anyone else, and know that hopefully there'll be the right person out there that appreciates the legacy. But it's a quandary, isn't it? It's really a burden, as you say.
It is. My kids and I tease about it, and I'm like, well, you get the hutch and it comes with the goblets. So I'll be gone. You figured that one out. But I think one of the things that we do we take the time and talk to the kids and the grandkids about them, so that they know why they're important to me, and
exactly
why they should be important to them. Because they hold those stories that on my own I couldn't remember all those things. But I look at them and I can remember them, and I want them to be able to look at them and remember them. Because that's where the value is, right? It's in the memories, not
absolutely.
the things.
Yeah. And I think them understanding your grandmother and understanding her importance to you perhaps is the key. That will, turn an interest on in them, and think these goblets are valuable. We won't throw them in the skip bin.
And we're one of those families that has the great grandparents and the great great grandparents pictures on the wall. And my youngest children, they know them. They'll say can I have another picture of my great great grandma, and they know that. So we'll see. We'll see. But this has been a lot for me.
But it was great. It was really great.
Oh, Laurie.
And I know what you mean by, like, while I may have given Leonore's story linearly, each time I came to an impasse, or not even an impasse, but like a new discovery, it really provoked deep thoughts within my family. And my essays are always inclusive of other family members. And so it's really connected me to extended family. I lost my mom almost 40 years ago. So, my Aunt Molly is her eldest sister, which is both ironic that the youngest passed this,
Yeah.
the soonest.
Yeah.
But I never realized I wanted to reach out and capture these these moments until I started writing about Leonora. I mean, she's really been a springboard for a lot of
Because-
family
Yes.
Because
exploration.
she's real. She's
She's
real.
very real to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how we keep people real, right, is by telling their stories,
Exactly.
by keeping memories of them around us, by thinking a little more deeply about who they were and who we are in relation to them. And I think also by being intentional about how we form our own legacy.
It's funny.
And we think about what are we
goblet-
going to leave?
Right. And it's funny, the goblet is a reflection or as a reminder of beauty. But it's also fragile, right? And yet it
Mhm.
was strong. So it is a perfect metaphor for your
Yeah.
grandmother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
useful. I mean, I can drink out of it. I do sometimes.
And grandmas can be very utilitarian.
For sure.
But Laurie, I think your story about the goblets, and I knew you were coming on to tell a story about goblets, and I was really looking forward to hearing it. It's more than a story about goblets. It's
Yeah.
definitely more than that. It's just such a beautiful story about your grandmother.
Yeah. But
And
you know,
what
every
a
story
wonderful lady.
is more than
Yeah,
what you expect it to be.
I think so. Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, isn't it? You know.
Yeah. That's what I love. That's why I'm so blessed to be able to do what I do. Right.
Yeah.
Because the stories that we tell, the stories that we choose to tell, they make us better people.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to keep them alive.
Yeah.
You know, so they don't die out with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Diane, just back to your story for a minute. Oh, look, when you said that Leonora was born at Cork in 1849, my ancestor, probably the one that means the most to me, is came out as an Earl Grey orphan, and she was in a workhouse in Cork and came in 1848. So, you know, I've done a lot of research into that time, and the conditions were absolutely dreadful, you know, and it's just
It's funny, they've been I had an opportunity to meet with a couple of people this summer in Pierpont, New York, which is where they moved to. And Irish Settlement Road was not great terrain. The North Country had been covered with ice in the Ice Age, right?
Yeah.
And as a result of it, when the ice slid across, it created these hills and valleys. On one side of the valley, there'd be silt and it'd be great, but the other side was slopey and rocky and so on.
Yeah.
The Irish got the shitty portion of it. They didn't get the really great flatter pastoral lands, but you know, they could go out and hunt a rabbit and they weren't going to get shot or put in the workhouse for having stolen from the baron food that they needed, right? So I mean, it was just a totally different world. It's amazing. And it all comes to bear these days where you watch where people are, wanting to have a better life and through circumstance and where they were born, they don't have it. And, they just want to go out and shoot a hare.
Yeah, exactly.
And not go to jail.
Yeah. And, a lot came down to luck too. Like Leonora, she made her own.
Did she end up moving to Australia from the workhouse?
She was an Earl Grey orphan, so she was chosen to come out of and that's what I was going to say about luck. It was just luck for her that she was chosen, as they had to show themselves to be responsible girls. So she must have been responsible, and it must have been something about her that they chose her. And yeah, she had a wonderful life and a huge family and a successful life out here. So you do wonder what might have happened to the girl next to her that didn't get chosen, you know.
And she survived the ship, which Lori.
Yeah, yes, that's a thing on its own, isn't it? You know, and then survived 12 children. But but you know, Leonora, she made her own luck, really, didn't she? But it started with her mum, didn't it, when she educated her so well?
Yeah, I think so, but I think there also was a curiosity and a tenacity. At any point, she
Yeah.
could have just said, "Okay, this is my lot in life," and
Too
just
much. Yeah.
fumbled through. But she really took it to the next level and said, "How can I make changes and long-lasting changes?" And I think that's what inspires me every day.
Oh,
To
absolutely.
want to write this and
Yes,
make sure that other people know her story.
Yeah, yeah. I want you to write it too because I want to read it. So, and there'll be a lot of people saying that. So can I just ask, does anyone have any questions? Barbara, any questions from you?
I don't.
I see you
Anne,
nodding.
go ahead. I have a thought, but go ahead, Anne.
Sorry, it was a question, Diane, that you mentioned in the beginning, that when you started looking at these things, somebody suggested that you do a Substack. And I am researching my grandmother, who won a Commander of the British Empire medal during World War I as a civilian. And I'm finding out all these amazing things. And I too want to write a book about her. And I'd actually like to write a book and sell it. So maybe a traditional publisher would pick it up, because her story, and I won't go into it now, but anyways, is like, holy cow, she was a real kick-ass woman, and in a time when women were not.
Right.
But I've been told, don't write anything about it, don't publish anything about it, unless you've got a contract to sell the book.
I'm not.
And it's like, I got so much I want to talk about.
I don't know if that's Jill Swenson is on the call, and she's the one who encouraged me. I'm not putting this out as a serial. I mean, if I'm really doing it to bring in an audience that might be interested, and I think that's what I'm working on. I mean, why would somebody want to read something about someone they know nothing about? So I don't think it hurts. I mean, this is just like, maybe the rest of you will disagree with this, but I think, you're dropping little breadcrumbs out there, and little snippets. I mean, one of the pieces I did was looking at what they were wearing when they were protesting and what we wear when we protest. I mean, so it's just these juxtapositions of life that are fun to do. And gosh, you've got so much. I mean, that's really rich. And you should definitely talk to Jill.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just my mother handed me a plastic bag with a legal size manila folder in it, with a whole bunch of things in it, and just said, this might interest you. And she died a couple years later, and I wish I had really looked at it early. It went moldy. It was in plastic, it was in a safe, and there was some other leather things in there, and they went moldy. So it's taken me years to actually get them clean so I can actually look at them, and I am just blown away. It is just phenomenal. They survived over 100 years, and there's just so much to tell about this wonderful woman. So I don't know everybody yet. I've just started this sort of thing. So anybody wants to give me advice?
Anne Rockley is amazing. I've known her for years. She's just a phenomenal storyteller, but a scientist when it comes to writing too, which I think.
Yes, I am.
So it seems those stories have survived so they could come to you, Anne. So you're the one.
It is absolutely incredible, because there is nothing. There's nothing about her in Wikipedia. There's nothing about her in so
let
many
me jump
areas.
in Anne and respond. I'm Jill. I've been a
Oh,
literary
you're Jill.
agent.
Sorry, somebody said Jill, and I'm going, I don't know who that is. Hi,
Yeah,
Jill.
I've been a
Sorry. I
literary
don't let it take
agent.
up all the time, but yeah,
Been a
if I'm,
literary agent for more than a decade. I've stepped back
oh,
because I've now written a book which will be coming out. And I thank you, Lori, for the applause. But as an agent, I would suggest that you do get on Substack, right? And you
okay.
find other. Here's the thing, what you're publishing on Substack is different than a book manuscript.
No,
Right, the
yes,
book will be
very.
different. And what you want to do on Substack is create an audience, right? Because one of the things you have to prove to a traditional publisher is that there is a sufficient number of people who are going to shell cash out of their pocket to purchase a book on this subject, right? And if nobody's ever heard of it and there's nothing ever been written about it, you have a lot of work ahead of you to create an interested audience to demonstrate to a traditional publisher that there are so many people just waiting with bated breath. I'm kidding, right? But I don't think you should think of, I can't publish anything. In fact, I would insist that most agents won't take on a client who has never published anything on the subject. So by getting something published, whether you publish it on Substack or it's in a magazine or a literary journal or a science magazine, it demonstrates that you've met editorial standards and that there was an audience interested and willing to pay for access to that information. So I'm going to give you the same advice I gave Diane. Get on Substack or some other platform, a blog, a WordPress blog, something in which you're putting out for the public enough information to entice them to keep learning and know more. You got a great story.
Thank
think
you. I will
Jill-
do that.
Yeah.
I think Jill does.
Great advice.
Jill, you've done a really good job of that, of telling enough about what your book is going to be about.
Yeah.
And giving us just enough to say, this is a topic I'm interested in. This is approach I appreciate. She's got a voice that is going to tell this story that I want to hear, without just, giving out the goods.
Giving away. Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't start writing until I'd really finished the book manuscript. And
Mhm.
because I was a different person after finishing writing and doing all that research, I had so many more research questions and I had so much backstory and history
Yeah.
that hadn't gone into the book. So that's and I try and just give a very short glimpse, something small enough to put in the palm of my hand each week to my readers to say, I'm here and this place is so interesting. Here's another little tidbit.
And there's still more going on. There's
Oh,
still
it
more
never
going on.
ends.
My Amy Henry story, the Call Me a Bastard, I'd written that completely. And I mean, 2 days ago, I still got new information. I mean, it's never that
Yeah.
once it starts, it's not like a story ever ends. For
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
it never
Yeah.
ends. I mean, I'll be
Yeah.
105 and I'm going, oh, I wonder whatever
Yeah.
happened about that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and
Great.
I think fabulous advice, Jill, for everyone. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Go back to Barbara. You had something?
Actually, Kathy's in line there. Go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
is
had
she?
just
Right,
going to
thank
make
you.
a comment, and again, for those of you I've never met, welcome. It's nice to meet you. And I am not a genealogist. I am not a journalist or anything like that. I'm a photo manager, and I've come to Projectkin in that realm. And so I'm a dabbler in family history. I'm at the very beginning, but I was going to say, Anne, having stories I'm reading on Substack now, which to me has just been a wonderful place for me to be able to read. I've got a little bit of brain fog from some illnesses to read shorter stories. And if somebody wrote a book about Rose and the ship, I'd buy it because I know the story.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure I'd go if I saw the book just flash by on Amazon. I'm not sure I'd buy it, but I know I want more. I need to know more.
There's more coming. Don't worry, Don't worry, Kathy. There's more coming.
because now I'm hooked, and it's the same with the other stories I see. So from a totally unprofessional opinion, I think that is a way to get people knowing about you and reading, so that down the road, if you were then to say, oh, I know I've written a whole book about this, I know what the story is and I know right away. And now how wide the audience gets, that's a different question. But and I think the point you just made, Lori, about constantly finding new things, the book is going to be like, once you make the book, you can't really add part
Yeah.
two of the book. But here you can add, hey, look, here's my book, and I found out more about the story now.
Right.
And so I think that's, to me, what I'm finding to be the beauty of Substack right now, is I can read well-written things and get a taste for, oh, I want to hear more about these stories. So that was just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah.
My 2
Yeah.
cents is I'm reading such great stuff and I remember the stories, but I can't remember who wrote them. And I am right now scrambling and searching for a story about 2 men who took a riverboat excursion, went up the Mississippi. Was it you,
Oh.
Lori? Where is it? Okay, now thank you. Okay, because
George. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Lori, because there's
with
that
Lori,
sighting
if
of
you're
a
looking
sea
for a story,
serpent,
start there.
right? And I thought, oh man, I can't find my reference, but that was in Lori's story. Okay.
Yes, the sea creature. I thought of you actually. We were, I forget where we were on Lake Champlain, and they have a sea urchin too there, a sea creature history.
Yes.
And in 1984, a whole boatload of people saw it. What the
Yeah.
heck?
Yes.
I
So
thought
I'm
I-
working on
what-
supernatural stuff for the sea serpents this week. And I couldn't,
Nice.
it's like, who wrote that? I remember
that was George.
going up the river.
Right. And that's another story that once it was done, because I write like 4 to 6 months ahead. And once that was done and I put it to bed, I mean, I probably found another eight more things that I could add to that, because people are like, I grew up in Louisville and I'm like, ooh, I'll take a note on that.
The other thing I think we have the benefit of in this world, just hit me as you were speaking, Lori, that one of the last client I'm working on from my photo organizing business, this family, they ended up in Canada. They came in 1949 and were going to be here for 2 years and then go back to the States, and never left. But their ancestors, my client's mother's, so it would be my client's grandmother, I have to kind of get these things in my head. She was a prolific writer. She wrote poetry. She wrote a book. She was a preacher's wife. She wrote a book called Manor of the Mats. But there's in there, we found like just stuff. She'd write out like a big story. She wrote one called The Two Virginians. And in her day, there was nowhere to share those, nowhere to put them. And I'm just thinking like, and now the book is out of print. I have the handwritten, well, not me, they have the handwritten manuscript she wrote on legal paper for the book. But luckily, Internet Archive, Barbara, it does have the copy of the book, but the family can't even get any more copies of her book. And I'm just like, man, if Substack had existed in Nanny's days, she would have had she'd be writing stuff every day. And it's just like, it's such an opportunity, I think, just to share stories when just without having to have the whole book written and the ending where we're dealing with things that maybe there isn't an end. But
So
absolutely.
now if I may add, that's exactly where I was going with all of this. As I hear this whole discussion, to me, at the end of the day, it's about what is this passion that's pushing us forward. It never was about the goblets, but it is about the passion that drives those goblets. And I think for each of us, that's so fascinating to explore, because, to be perfectly blunt, I think we're at that stage of life where we are passionate. We're figuring out what that thing is that we're pulling forward and sending back. So, in some sense, you're going in both directions at the same time. One is the forward, but also the backward. Where did I come from? Who were these people? And where is that taking me? Wow, there's so many fabulous moments all the way through today's discussion. I'm verklempt.
I'll be watching it again because there's so many things to sort of that grabbed me as Laurie and Diane were speaking. So thank you just so much for everything you've put into it today. Can I just say before we go, next month, looking forward, we have the wonderful Kathy Stone is going to be our guest, and everyone from Projectkin is aware of Kathy from Kathy's Corner, so I'm really looking forward to that. And I have a new guest that, not a new guest, but a guest that is a new Projectkin member to introduce to you, Debbie. And she's from Deb's World and a prolific blogger and now Substacker. So she's got a story to tell that fits in with the theme of Kathy's story of strength and resilience. So once again, different stories. So come along and hear them. And come along to our live preview next month, because I will have some exciting news about what we're doing in December. So it's all fallen together now and it's all happening. So I'm looking forward to telling you all about that. So once again, thank you so much, Laurie, and alphabetical, keep forgetting, so much Diane and Laurie, my new rule. I just really appreciate how much just where the stories have taken us today, and your approach, both of you, your approach to them, and they've just been absolutely wonderful. So thank you, and thank you everyone for coming along. And don't forget also, if you would like to be a speaker, anyone listening to this today, we're almost booked out for 2026, but we have just a couple of spots left. So Barbara will drop that in the notes for you with the link to register. Yeah,
I certainly will. Thank you
Yep,
so
over to you,
much,
Barbara.
Jennifer. A big claps for you too, and all you've done in envisioning this program, pulling it together, and this magic as the stories tumble out. So let's continue the discussion in the notes with the recording. And I think I've picked out a number of the things that you've said to be including and cross-referencing. Never hesitate to drop those into the notes as well, into the comments. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. And
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
Jennifer
you
and
so
Diane.
much.
Thank you so much. This has been so much
This
fun.
was great.
It was super
Oh,
fun.
thank
I
you.
had a
No,
great
it
time.
was. It's fabulous all around.
You guys have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
See you later.
Bye.